webcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar, all about measuring customer satisfaction and perception. We're lucky enough to be joined by two presenters today. Our first will be Fran Cadell, who's Service Delivery Manager at Norfolk Community Health and Care NHS Trust. And then we'll be hearing from Sammy Callio, CEO of Happy Signals. And Sammy is going to be sharing some statistics about what people are doing around satisfaction and measuring, and some of his experience on how to, not only how to measure it, but what to do with that information. So I'm really looking forward to that. Happy Signals are also our sponsor for today's webinar, so big thanks to them. So first of all, as I say, we have Fran from Norfolk Community Health and Care NHS Trust. Fran should be on the line now. Hi, Fran.
Hi.
Hello, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Well, we're really excited to hear actually a little bit more about your story, really, because as winners of the Small Service Desk Award this year, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
We really wanted to get some of your story to share with more people about some of the great things you've been doing there, the changes that you've made and the improvements that you've made, and really how that's gone for you. So I'll let you get going with your presentation. Thanks so much.
Oh, no, thank you. Thanks very much, Zoe. Okay, welcome everybody. As said, I'm Fran Cadell. I'm the Service Delivery Manager. I was previously the Incident Manager until recently, and we're at Norfolk Community Healthcare NHS Trust. Just want to give you a little bit of a background, really, and a little bit of a brief of the presentation today. So the Norfolk Community Health and Care has a vision to improve the quality of people's lives in their homes and community by providing the best integrated health and social care. We're only a small trust, approximately about 3,000 staff, and we're geographically spread over about 5,300 kilometres, so we're quite spread out in Norfolk. But today, really, what I'm here to talk to you about is a little bit of history about us and our journey that we've been on, working with the SDI, and also some of the challenges and big points that we've had to cover. A little bit about what NCH&C sees as customer perception versus customer satisfaction. It's all about timing, so having a little look at that. A couple of examples of our survey questions, just to sort of give you a few sort of provoking thought moments, and how it assisted us in our journey and maturity and why it's so important. So hopefully that's just given you a little taster of what we've got coming up. So I'll carry on with the slides. Our journey. When I started at Norfolk Community Health and Care back in 2011, things were really different here. It was much more of a help desk function where we just logged and shoved, and we had a phone system which was literally a voicemail, which was switched on throughout the operational hours. I was actually employing one member of staff to sit and take voicemails off the phone all day, so customers were very fortunate if they did actually speak to an analyst at the time. Just to paint the picture, it was very much one phone in the middle of a desk. We were in this remote little site in the middle of nowhere, not near our customer base. None of our customers could actually get in the room because they couldn't buzz their way through. And all of the staff that I had were dual rolled. So one day they'd be service desk, the next day they'd be desktop, and vice versa. We were quite fortunate, still are today. We have a very, very lovely customer base who's very forgiving due to the nature of the business being care in itself. So just to refer to the slide above there, as you can see, it's been busy and challenging at times. Yet in 2018, we have managed to maintain our 3-star service desk rating. And as Zoe sort of said, we've managed to also win the Best Small Service Desk for 2018, which is amazing. We're super pleased with that. So all our calls went to voicemail, and I came in and joined the company and didn't really know where to start, to be honest, because there were so many little things that were not quite right. So that was when we then started to look at customer perception surveys. We've also had some time where we've had to do some big things, such as removing voicemail, being more present, if you like, through trust inductions for onboarding and locality meetings, BRM, and that sort of stuff, all through our journey to get to the point of where we are today. And don't get me wrong, we're certainly not finished, but it's a vast improvement. So what we found really interesting, or me myself, at the very start when I joined the company, it's quite a good thing to observe, obviously, and sit back and sort of have a look for the first sort of week or so. And one thing that I did observe when I was asking customers about the service they'd received, a lot of customers said they liked IT in general and they thought they were good. But then they went on in the same conversation many times and commented how they didn't like various aspects of the service, such as, something was happening to them at that time with their IT kit, but they needed to speak to somebody and they couldn't, straight to voicemail. So it seemed it was very dependent on the questions that you were asking to whether it was referring to service as a whole or the service of a particular event, that the opinion then of the customer was vastly different. So at that point, we sort of took a step back and had a look to build on it a bit more and explore it. And then that's when NCH&C decided to look at what we feel is the differences between perception and satisfaction for our customers. For me personally, I'd say that we all know companies where we perceive to have had a good service. So for me personally, I like my Amazon Prime. I'm a big user, and overall they tend to do the majority of things that I need, and using it on an app, and I can get it delivered quickly to my house without having to leave. However, on that occasion when my parcel doesn't arrive on time, my satisfaction does obviously decrease. That one transaction doesn't necessarily change my overall perception of the company, but that bad experience is not forgotten in a hurry either. Luckily, with them, for me personally, that is an exception, not the rule. So therefore, it is something that I do think, as an whole, they're overall a good service. That's how we started to look at to do the definition. So we defined it to give us a good starting ground to enable customers' opinions to help us build the service from an IT company overhead, which is very much what we were, to trying to be a company asset. So to go back to the slide here, in NCH&C, we believe customer satisfaction to be how satisfied a customer is with a particular event or incident. So every single time they have a customer touch point with us, do they feel their needs are being met? Are they happy with how they've been treated? Does they feel that, we're providing them exactly what they need, at that right time? Whereas perception to us means more of an overall customer opinion feeling on the overall IT service that's being received based on everything they've experienced to date. So that's kind of how we try to differentiate it, and that helped us a lot by looking at then the granulars and being able to then set in some really good questions that were giving us really good answers, and then being able to trend them, etc., over the years. So on that note, when is a good time to start surveying? $1 million question. I don't think there is necessarily a good time or a bad time. For me personally, we knew that in our IT operations, we had an awful long way to go in maturity. So we compiled a customer perception survey that covered many, many areas. Now, I'm not saying that it's always the most amazing thing to have lots and lots of questions, but for us, we really had no clue what was going on out there in the area. So we needed to really drill down to get some information to then move forward. So with that, we looked at both sides of the questions of perception and satisfaction. And when we ran our first survey, which we used a hosted online survey solution to create that very first benchmark, our expectations at the time were quite realistic, knowing we had many areas to improve, but the findings were extremely important to us because it really helped us prioritise. And we subsequently have sent the survey each year at the same time to ensure consistency for the customer in line with business demand. That way, then, we knew that it wasn't actually what the customer was going through necessarily. It was more about the exact time of year. And we always did it in quarter four because that's one of the busiest times of year for us here. And then we ensured that we used that to do some trending and comparison of what was going on out there for our customers. So it was very much just take the plunge and go with it. And we wanted to, like I say, use all of the information to try and move forward. Like I say, our expectations were very realistic. We knew it wasn't going to be amazing. We were happy on the things that obviously we did get positive feedback, but it was really a key thing for us to understand what exactly were the feelings out there. So, example surveys that we sort of, some of the questions we sent out. So, you know, it can be as simple as out of 10, please rate your analyst that dealt with your request, or which of the following analyst attributes stood out. You'll notice that some of the questions are analyst specific. This is because we needed to gauge the service provided by staff to work alongside our staff skills matrix to develop staff where required. There's also one in there about course content, as the survey was based on all of IT, which includes an IT training section, so it's not just based on service desk front end. And all of our answers were on a scale rather than the yes/no closed question format. For me, one of the questions that I felt was quite important and I took really to the heart was, how confident are you that your participation in this will drive continuous improvement? I think that gives a really good indicator to how engaged your customers are with the service and how confident they are that you're going to follow through with your word. We all get buckets and buckets of surveys sent to us, especially here in the NHS, but we wanted to make sure that IT, when we did send it out, customers knew we took it really seriously and it was something that was used. Their feedback was absolutely invaluable to us, and it complements, you know, through to our annual plan every year to make sure that, again, we're focusing on the areas that are important to them. Alongside that, we obviously have a variety of other small surveys, such as an event customer survey, like when customers close their calls on the self-service portal or over a telephone call, and they're sent an automatic questionnaire with a rating. We also have a lot of walk-ins, as we're now based on a flagship site on the main hub site. So when we have walk-in staff, they now have a typical smiley face to sad face on an iPad for when they walk in and walk out to give their opinions. And all of the methods have seemed successful in their own right and have been used to improve the service to date. So with going back to what I feel is quite important of how confident are they we're going to actually use it, this is how we tried to show customers that we were following through. So from the survey, we'd analyse the results which fed into our IT annual plan, and the outcomes were communicated in our monthly messages, which are cascaded down by team management. And they're also sent to everybody just in the email, but it's whether everybody gets time to actually read the email, but it does come from the management down as well. We did use the concept of "you said we did", just try and keep it meaningful and prevent the message getting lost in long blurbs. And so here are a few examples, like how easy is it for you to contact us? Obviously, at the very beginning, the results are coming back as near on impossible. You know, we can't actually speak to anyone. You know, when we do have an IT issue, it can take 2 days. So what we did, we removed the voicemail during operational hours, implemented a call distribution system so people could actually answer the phone, and with the right setup of the right resources in place, we then were able to set a KPI of 30-second wait time so that our clinicians know that when they're out with a patient, their laptop in a patient's home, they have an IT issue, they can phone up and be answered virtually straight away and know that they're going to get the help and support they need to be able to carry out their clinical role. Next one was, does the IT service desk meet your needs? That's always a really good one to ask because it will depend on whether it's a want or a need, if you like, on the answers. So it's quite good to sort of pull that apart a little bit. What we found is today it wasn't actually a need. It was more of a want, whereas some of our businesses have changed slightly in the way they operate. So now it is so much it could be needed. So we're now implementing an out-of-hours pilot to just see, you know, what the demand looks like and if it's something that we need to do moving forward. And as I say, with the service analyst, courteous professional, it is kept anonymous. However, we can see they have the option to say who the analyst is, if you like, and we have the option to be able to drill down a bit further with the individual if we want to, and that they're helpful for being able to work with the individual analysts. Now, for us, we also find it's not just about the negativity side of things. This is also a lot of the time where things come out about individuals who have been really helpful to a customer, so they've gone above and beyond, or you know, they've really helped them have a better day. So that stuff is always really good as well. So hopefully that will give you a little bit of a concept around how we sort of like proved what we did with the results and made sure that it was quite timely. It's like a month, within a month of the survey being completed, we'd then make sure we went back with all our findings and tried to get it out to all of our key stakeholders, etc., etc. In my opinion, companies can have the very best technology in the world and be the most financially efficient. However, if the perception service is poor, then I think the other two successes can almost become irrelevant. The perception of your service is absolutely paramount, really. So for us, that's kind of a part of the basis of how we've continued our journey along. Having that in the forefront of our minds all the time. And in summary, really, NCH&C feel that customer perception satisfaction should be looked at in their own right and really looked at with a magnifying glass, if you like, to make sure you get the best information out and be able to then move forward with it. Timing is key, as in as long as you do it. And so what time of the year isn't necessarily something that is going to drive the right results if you're at a position like we were, where we needed to actually start from the beginning. However, consistency is the key. You know, it is absolutely making sure we do it at the same time every year. Choose your questions carefully to ensure your responses are not ambiguous and that your findings are fed back to customers, so they don't just think it's another survey that no one will do anything with. That, again, to me is just so crucial. So just making sure that you've had a real good look at your questions and how it could be, again, your questions can be perceived and they're not being read in 4 different ways when actually it's one particular question that you're trying to get to the bottom of. Do shout about your findings so that people can see and hear them, explain what you've done or doing, and celebrate those improvements. You know, all of us as IT departments can struggle when it comes to blowing our own trumpet. However, this is a really good opportunity to make sure that we're telling everybody about, you know, when things have gone really well. And like I say, try and enjoy the process, really. It can be quite overwhelming when you've got lots of development areas. However, what you can try and enjoy from it is where you sit back and you realise that actually out of those top 10 things that we wanted to try and achieve, we've managed to do 6 and we've done those really well and the customer's really happy and we've only got 4 left to go before we move on to our next stage. So they won't always be good results, but it can lead to absolutely amazing improvements. So like I say, that's kind of where we went on our journey. It kept that in the background, kept it going every year, and then just focused in on the areas that we felt needed to be prioritised and improved. We did have help with the business as well. You know, the business did help prioritise anything that if we weren't sure. But yeah, overall, I think it's a really valuable exercise and something that can seem a little bit daunting at first, but once you kind of get into it, it's then something that happens almost organically and will continue to help you improve. So that is really the end of my presentation. So I hope that's okay, not taking up too much of anybody's time today. I have put any questions, but I understand we're going to do those all at the end.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Fran. Brilliant. What we will do, if people listening do have questions for Fran, please do post them now using your kind of panel in your webinar window, but we will come to those all at the end when we've heard from our next speaker as well. But do feel free to post them now whilst they're fresh in your mind. So yeah, thank you so much, Fran. It was really good to hear a bit more about your story, actually. And as I say, we're going to be hearing from Sammy in a moment. If you can hang on with us, Fran, till the end, and we'll come to you with all of our questions. I'm sure we'll have plenty, and we'll talk to you again afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So let me just bring our next presenter in now. I'll hand over the control of the slides. As I mentioned, Sammy is CEO of Happy Signals. And he's going to be sharing some of his thoughts on this topic with us as well. Sammy, are you there?
Yeah, here I am. Happy to be here.
Hello, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. And you mentioned to me that you've got some statistics to share and some of our findings from our joint report. So I think that's going to be really interesting as well.
Yeah, that's the one I will start with, then going through a couple of problems that I have seen happening in the measuring employee experience. And then, of course, showing how we have resolved those problems. So those 3 issues in about 20 minutes.
Fantastic. Okay, I will let you get going. Thanks so much.
All right. So yeah, happy to be here. I'm presenting this on behalf of Happy Signals. I'm the CEO of the company, and the subject of today's webinar is exactly what we do. So we do employee experience measurement with big enterprises and organizations, and we try to help to make it as easy as it can be, but also as actionable as that it can be. It was really great to hear from Fan that the focus was really in how to use this employee experience, because that really is a valuable thing, how you can focus what you really do in your service management and how you develop your service desk. But let's go through this. So yeah, so the only point why I'm here and what is kind of driving me is to help you guys to really use this employee experience or customer experience, however you want to call it.
Sammy, sorry.
Really, yep.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Have you got your slide share started?
Thanks.
There we go. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Carry on.
Sorry for that. Yeah. So the thing we help you to do is really kind of shift the focus from the internal cost of IT to really show the business units or the real business units of your company to how and what is the value you are bringing to them as their employee happiness, but also the productivity of the end users. So not focusing on the IT internally, but also focusing on how efficient it is to use your services from the business point of view. So as promised, I will first show you a couple of results from the SDI report that we did together during this spring. You can also download this total report from our website. You can see the address there, so happysignals.com and so on. But one of the most interesting and really kind of good results from that survey was that 65% of all people that answered the survey are now thinking that customer experience is the thing to do and the thing what you can use for focusing, even though that it is more important than the traditional KPIs. This is a thing I think that has changed quite rapidly during the last 2 years, at least from my experience. But let's go through some of the other results from the survey as well. So one question that is really kind of an interesting and important thing to really focus on so that you can really trust the results that you are gathering from these kind of surveys. And this survey and the answers here are about the continuous measurement that you are doing with your service desk. So Fran was talking about the yearly survey. I'm talking about the kind of continuous surveys that are done after the ticket is resolved. So in this sense, it is quite big amount. So 69% of all organizations are getting response rates that is under 20. For me, that is a bit risky. 20% is, I think that is enough high, but if you are under 10% or only a little more over that, you will only get mainly positive feedback. This is something that we have experienced in the case that it's more easy for employees to give that positive feedback. So in many cases, you won't get the kind of the feedback you need to develop the services. So overall, if you get very high results, you will get also negative feedback, but that is, you have to get that feedback to be better in the services. So that is at least one problem in the IT service management that you have to resolve in the beginning. So really you can focus the decision making on base of the employee experience or employee perception. This was also quite interesting. 82% of all people that answered the survey are thinking that their own service desk is at least in minimum level, if talking about the kind of service quality from the employee's perspective. Of course, this is not true, cannot be, but it is quite, in a way, it's also a good thing that we are thinking when we are running the services that we are doing quite well, but also a bit kind of there is a risk. You should know better how you really are doing to understand it and really do development and not kind of be too satisfied with the level where you are now. But now the main problems that we have seen in this area and where we are really helping our customers, low response rates is really important thing so that you can really do some actions. You have to get high response rates. The other thing is that we too often meet companies that are collecting this kind of satisfaction input, but are not really using that to make any actions on base of the data. For me, that is only spamming the end users. So you have to be able to kind of make the procedures how you use the data, and I will show you some examples of that, how to really use that data and communicate back to the employees as well what you have done based of those results that you get from them. And then for me, I personally hate the traditional SLAs. I have said it quite often nowadays. I do that because many of those are not driving better employee experience. They are conflicting with it. I understand that many of those are done to be able to measure the first level of service desk and how people act in there and the cost savings and all that. But when we have been talking with 500 employees from different kind of organizations, we have found out that it's too often that they know this word SLA and they are not seeing that as a benefit from their own view. But I'm more than happy to talk about that issue in let's say, a longer presentation or one-to-one meetings. But that's one thing we see that is causing problems in this employee experience area. But then how we tackle those things. So let's start from the response rates. In our case, the average is about 40% of people will answer this kind of survey that we are doing. So we integrate to any ticketing system. Most of our integrations are done with ServiceNow, but we also are able to integrate to whatever ticketing system you are using. The idea here is that we are asking this feedback immediately when the ticket is resolved. So typically ticketing systems are asking it when it's closed, but when we are asking it when it's resolved, you will gain much more feedback because it's still something that the employees are thinking about. They do get the resolution there. It is right timing. It is not like 5 days after the thing was already resolved. The only thing what they have to do is click a number here. Then we will show them a web page saying that thank you for your feedback. And if you have time, please give us some additional information. Depending on the score, if it was 9 and 10, we are asking positive things. 7, 8, meaning that is a neutral. We are asking them what we could do better. Under 7, we are asking what we must change. So those factors in the middle of this page are different depending on the score. And those things are not just something, they are something that we have input from employees, how they have felt about the services after using it. So they are really kind of the right things to be asked from employees. Also, there is one very crucial question that is kind of turning this around. So we are asking employees to estimate how much time did they lose because of this incident or request. So they have an option there to estimate how much time from their productivity was lost. Meaning that now we are showing the employees that we care about their time. Because in many cases, they are just feeling that IT is only interested about their own productivity or own efficiency, and they're not caring about us. So this question is not maybe easy to answer in some cases, but it's showing that you care, and that's why it is really relevant there. Also, I believe that is one of the reasons why employees are willing to answer this survey. There still is third phase. This one will be published in a few months, but there is a way how to communicate back to the employees, meaning that let's close the loop immediately, showing that this is something we have found from other employees and these are the actions we have been doing on base of this feedback. So not sending an email or publishing an article in the internet showing that these are the action IT is doing because of these feedbacks, but showing it immediately. So again, right timing. So one page, one click, one page, and then thank you page showing what has been done. That's our recommendation. You cannot ask more than that in these continuous surveys. Of course, as Fran told you, if you are doing a yearly survey, then you can have additional questions, but to get high response rates, you cannot ask too much. Even though we didn't ask any, let's say, category information, we didn't ask what channel was used or what country the employee was from or what channel and service was used. That all is gathered from the ticketing system. So I will not today show how this analytic tool works, but the idea is that in there you can deep dive to any areas. So if you are responsible, let's say, for certain services or certain tools that you are using, you can only see feedback for that area. Or if you are thinking about developing the channels, it is easy for you to see how satisfied your employees are to all channels that you are having. And here an example of channels. This in fact is our benchmark information. We are calling that happiness score. So this feedback here is gathered from more than 167,000 answers to our survey. And those are IT incident cases and from the last 6 months. The percentage amounts on the top of this page are how many used certain channel. So email still and phone are still the biggest channels that we are measuring, walking only 1% and portal 19%. If you calculate those together, you can notice that it is not 100%. That's because there are some other channels like automation and some different channels that some of our clients are using that are not published in our benchmark. But still quite obvious that email and phone are the biggest ones. The big score there in the middle, that's the so-called happiness score. And the higher the score is, of course, the more happy the users are for that service. And if you look at it, it shows that the portal is the most hated channel. And I would here compare portal and email, because in those channels we will send those most complicated cases with screenshots and that kind of stuff. Phone and chat, you use them for a bit easier cases. But the interesting thing here about the perception of services is that if you look at the portal, it is 55, the happiness, the lowest score. But the lost work time per ticket is 3 hours, 45 minutes. And if you compare that to email, which is 4 hours, 35 minutes, you can notice that email is getting higher scores because it's so easy to use. Everybody knows it. It's daily thing for everybody. But it ends up in a situation where the employees are losing almost 1 hour more per ticket than they would be when they would use portal. Meaning that even though their perception of the service is not so good in portal, they end up saving a bit more time. Some of our clients are now using this data to communicate back to the employees that you are saving 1 hour more if you use our portal. So driving employees to use the portal. The perception, the number here depends, so the score for portal, I think the perception is so bad because the employees, of course, are comparing that to the portals and services they're using in the consumer world. And in ITSM, maybe we are using too much titles, words, and things that are not relating to employees in those portals. So for me, you can really have the portal as the happiest channel as well. We have seen that in many cases. But as said, this is average from all our clients. So typically portals are not using language that employees understand, and that's causing also some problems in the perception. But this was just an example that you understand what channels, how they are working, and do some actions on basis of that to direct people to different channels. Or let's say in this case, if you would be having this course for your company, I would also focus in making the portal a bit happier place, because 55, that could be 65 if you really do it well. Also, I will show you one thing that is maybe helping you guys to communicate how important employee experience is in an organization. So this example that I'm showing to you is for a company that has 10,000 employees, 80,000 tickets, and their internal hourly price would be about 50 pounds or euros, wherever you are from. So these are the kind of factual numbers. Our benchmark, the best companies are hitting score plus 75, and the other end is plus 40. But now you remember that we also asked about the lost productivity. And in average, the lost productivity is 3 hours, 3.5 hours. But if your happiness score is level 75, your employees would most likely estimate that they are losing a bit more than 1 hour. On the other end, if you are in level of 40, your employees would be estimating that they are losing a bit more even than 6 hours. So what we are saying here is that you can not only focus on the IT's internal cost, because you should really understand how much time is lost per all tickets from your business side. And really, to use business case-wise this same information, what we recommend our clients is that you start to measure, you get your own baseline, then you set a target. Let's say we want to be 15 minutes for efficient per each ticket after half a year or a year. That would already mean 1 million saving from the business units. So just to prove you that and show you practically that there is a business case also in the happiness. It's not only a big hard thing as our company is local. You really could make some benefits for your business, and to be able to show that kind of figure to them will change the cooperation with the business unit so that they really understand why to spend a bit money for making good employee satisfaction and employee service management for them in the end. Then there was still the problem about the SLAs. I will go that through in a way that I will show you what we call steps to happiness. You cannot directly go and change the SLAs quite easy. You might have outsourced partners, and you might have just done the big work to define the KPIs and so on. But what we recommend is just start to use continuous measurement for your service experience and do that for some time. Then the next step is really to do some actions based off the data. So making decisions, what channels to promote, what partners to use, whatever will be your big win. When you understand in our reporting or some other way where really you have the potential to develop the services, use the data. After that, it starts to be time to think about and look at the things from the perception side and the SLAs. Because what we have seen is that customers' perception is in many cases totally different thing than the SLAs, meaning that there might be many people complaining about the services, but still the SLAs are green, they are okay. On the other hand, there might be people that are really happy with the services, and if you look at the SLAs, they are red. So the employees, how they think about what they feel about the services should be the driving force, not the SLAs. And you should use that to understand the employees a bit more deeply to really do the right decisions on what kind of services you should promote and what kind of services you should develop and what is working and what is not working. The fourth step that we really recommend to do, maybe this takes about a year or two to really be on the level that you can really start to change the culture of the organization to be more employee-driven or employee-centric, again, whatever word you want to use there. But it was really nice to hear from Fran that I think you have done maybe this in a bit different steps, but you really seem to be in the level that you're really focused on the employee experience and doing decisions based on that on continuous basis. So not focusing on only kind of how fast you are answering the phone or when the first resolution is sent to employee, but also measuring how they feel about the services, which is at least as important as the kind of IT facts in the service. All right, I think that was kind of the 20 minutes that I was thinking about talking with you guys today, and of course, also very willing to answer all your questions and tell a bit more about the ways how we work and so on.
Fantastic, thank you, Sami, and another really interesting presentation there. And I think what's great is you've both talked in different ways about a lot of practical stuff that people can do, and I've seen some questions popping in already. So let's get to those. So first of all, here's a question for you, Fran. If I can just read you that one. From Andy, and he's asking, you mentioned that your teams were dual role at the beginning, and he's asking whether you were able to expand your staff numbers. I think you're still on mute at the moment, Fran, if you'd like to unmute your line.
Apologies,
that's all right.
Technical difficulty. Okay, so yeah, when I started, I had about 15 staff, so 15, and they were dual rolled, both desktop and service desk. However, for me personally and the company here, it wasn't working. So what we needed to do was take a step back, really. And one of the things was to get in that automatic call distribution so we could actually have a look at what the demand levels were, because we didn't know if we needed 3 people on the service desk, 30 people on the service desk, who knew, until we actually had some statistics to work with. We then used the Service Desk Institute's resourcing tool, the Excel spreadsheet that used to be knocking about, and that gave us a little bit of a pointer on, okay, what we think from the stats that were there, what we think we needed. So from that, so for me personally, we know that we need 6 people. Well, it's 5.5 technically, because one person goes on the phone in the morning. It isn't needed in the afternoon. So we go on to that, and then we could then split out the roles so that we had pure service desk analysts, and then desktop support. So they are now 2 separate teams, both under myself, but separate teams. And that worked really well actually as well, to add on to a side note, for career progression. So when it came to opportunities to comments, that sort of stuff. So that was pretty good actually. So separating it didn't mean that we needed more staff. It just means we needed to reallocate what we had. And actually, we've technically gone down on numbers by 1 or 2, but I wouldn't suggest that that was purely because of that. I would say it's because of a number of activities that we've done to be a bit more efficient than what we were when I started the company.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say actually. I guess everything that, the more information, the more data you have, like you're saying about, basing decisions on data, and that's really going to help you just be more efficient, isn't it? And on the kind of, that's the other side of the whole sort of perception thing, I think, is that it goes hand in hand with driving efficiencies and things like that as well.
Yeah, and it also helps with obviously with making sure your service level agreements are true to what you're saying you're going to try and meet. You're going to actually do, and you can't do that without the right numbers. That balance of the seesaw effect, isn't it? The demand versus what you've got resources wise to deal with it, whether that's self-service portal or physical people. But yeah, so that is quite key.
Absolutely, and I really liked so in Sammy's presentation, you had the steps to happiness, Sammy, and the fact that you were talking about basing your SLAs on finding out the customer perception and what's important to people, and how that's how they measure how well your service is doing, basing your SLAs on some of those things. So I think really that there's a really kind of important point about combining all of these things, and combining things that you perhaps do already and things that are going to be important to your business, but really finding out from the people that are using your services what it is that matters to them, and making sure that everything's kind of geared up to making the experience as good as it can be for them. So just having a look at a few more questions here. I've got one from Jessica, which I think is probably for you, Fran. Says, do you have samples of questions used for your service desk? I guess that's around the survey.
Yeah, I've got, like I say, we do have quite a lot, so I wouldn't necessarily say I'll list them all for you, but we've certainly got an overall list of ones that we survey every year, and I'm happy to provide those, or provide at least a sample of them if that helps, or whatever's the best way to get them to people who need it, really.
Yeah, I mean, we could always just thinking we could always do a blog with you, Fran, and share some sample questions or something like that afterwards. That might be an idea. Of people that are interested in that, we can have a look at sorting that out afterwards.
No problem.
And there's somebody is asking, Greg's asking about the contact channels you use, Fran, and I know you did mention, you mentioned some of those. So self-service, web chat, was that one of them?
No, we don't actually use web chat at the moment. In the fact, well, we do, but it's piloted, so I wouldn't want to say it's a live full service yet, because
but it's a road you're going down.
It's something that we're investigating, because obviously it's something that in the industry a lot of people do use. My tummy would tell me, if you like, at the moment it's not having the uptake that we thought it might, potentially, or based on the industry, but that's probably quite typical for our business. So I don't think it's necessarily about the channel not working. I think it's just it doesn't necessarily work for our clinicians and stuff who are out on area. If they've got an issue, they genuinely do want to pick up the phone, because they've got a patient in front of them. They don't want to be sitting there like trying to mess about with web chat and stuff.
Sure. And it's important to kind of match the channels to the needs of the people that are using them, of course.
Yeah, so again, you have to bear in mind NHS, especially because we're stuck on the outer skirts, if you like, of the UK. So just to sort of paint that picture a little bit more, a lot of our clinicians are very much an older generation. That is simply because of all of our clinical areas. A lot of them are specialised. Specialists in East Anglia are very, very difficult to recruit into, because once you get into East Anglia, no one can actually leave, is what the common joke is. So, you know, like a lot of our clinicians are a little bit more mature in age, and we're obviously working on this massive promo at the moment to try and get new students and stuff in through over to East Anglia. But I think that plays a big part in it. You know, younger generation nowadays always want to be on web chat or, you know, some way of doing it, you know, using technology, whereas, you know, people who are perhaps a little bit more mature would prefer still the phone, and that is very much what is our client base, our customer base here at Norfolk Community Health and Care.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So some more questions popping in. Thanks to everyone who is posting these. If we do run short on time, I can always pass your questions over to our speakers, but let's just do a couple more of these. So this one, Sammy, I think that would be for you, asking whether it's a good idea to change or restructure survey questions based on the answers that you receive.
So you.
So would you recommend, if you know, based on the information that you're getting back, you know, is it a good idea to go back and perhaps review what the actual questions that you're asking are?
I think there are two ways. I think the best thing to really understand if kind of the results that you are getting are not giving you enough insight of what they really think about. Have one-to-one discussions with a couple of employees. That's always something we recommend. And if you have never been discussing with, let's say, normal employees, not IT, not managers, but normal employees of your organization, just do that. Let them tell their stories to you. You will learn heavily, and try to do that without thinking that you have to train them. No, you have to listen, not train in those events, and that's something that will give you a bit more insight. The other thing is that, yes, you could, in some cases, try to understand more deeply about some issues that you have found out to be a problem for your end users, and add kind of a continuous question for that for some time to really understand a bit more about it, and then take it or remove it. I wouldn't change those, what we call factors, so the things if you were happy. Those are such things that you want to follow up about. Let's say your agent's attitude is one of the questions. You don't want to change it. You want to be able to see that if the attitude is changing, or the skills of the agents, how employees are receiving that, you want to be able to follow that continuously. So I wouldn't be changing those kind of questions all the time, but you could sometimes change it a bit.
Okay, yeah, like so. So you mean what you're measuring and how you're tracking will be impacted if you change obviously too much, because you won't be able to get consistent, consistent measurement, if you like. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's kind of always you have to be balancing with not asking too much and to get enough information.
Yeah, it's very true. And as you say, you can obviously, talk to people individually to get their fuller story and get more information. So Fran, coming back to you then, you talked about, the feeding back, or in fact, you both talked about the importance of feeding back what's been done and the improvements that have been made. Has that, what's the reaction been from that? Have you had some, acknowledgement from the wider business, or, from the customers themselves, in sort of that really shows that that's something that they really value, and that they're perhaps acknowledging the work that you guys have been doing?
Yeah, I think with reference to actually like the "you said we did" bit, people actually take note of it, because it is very sort of short snippets of stuff that is deemed important to them. Because it's important to them, they do want to know, so they do tend to pick it up and read it. We'd like to say we use a different types of ways of communicating it as well, to make sure it works. But overall, they've very much come on our journey with us. When I first came here and I mentioned the word customers or service users, they genuinely didn't know who that was. They didn't realise it was them. So they've come a long way, and they work with us nowadays. And to be honest, it formed very much a big part of our securing the best small service desk, because we actually had our customers with us telling people about what they think IT was, and how we get on, and what we do all together.
Of course, yeah. So that really would have shown you, the effect that it's had, wouldn't it? Yeah. So some good feedback in that respect, as well as to kind of what you've been doing. Okay, so and how have the analysts embraced this kind of increased amount of feedback that they're getting? Obviously, it all goes towards the improvements. Some positive, some probably not so positive, but it all having all of that information. You know why you're doing it, and that it's driving improvement. But have the team sort of fully embraced that as well?
For us, yeah, very much so. All of the analysts that I have here, I genuinely believe a bit in pride. So they're very proud of what they do and the service that they provide. They don't look at it as, somebody's, had a complaint about them or they're not happy,
Yeah.
They look at it as a positive thing, because sometimes we can all as human beings say something or a tone or something and it can be perceived in a different way. It's really good for us to stop and take a look at it. It doesn't mean that it is necessarily wrong. It just means that it's good to have a little look, so that we're aware and just have that little bit of reflection time, which I think is something that we all sort of don't always get, to be honest, in busy day-to-day life.
Yeah, very much so. Okay, brilliant, thank you. So we are going to be running out of time shortly. I've got one more question that's just popped in for you, Sammy. If I can put this one to you, it's probably not something that you can give a short, sharp answer to, but we'll see what your sort of first thoughts are on it. It's from Aaron, and he's saying that as an MSP, our customer base covers several vertical markets, so recruitment, media, education, and others. Sammy, do you see a difference in responses to surveys across vertical markets, and then do they have to be amended accordingly?
We are not really seeing that the industry has very much influence on anything here.
Okay.
So it might sound a bit weird, but I mean that from the kind of what kind of results they are getting or how much the response rate is or even what is appreciated. It is more about what kind of employees you have and where they are from.
Okay.
What I'm meaning by this is that the most and the biggest thing that influences is the technical experience of the employees.
Yeah.
Meaning that when the so-called millenniums are entering the market, the demand on skill is much higher than it used to be. So if that, let's say, 20 years old guy who has been using computers for 15 years enters the market and calls a service desk and they are asked, did you put your computer? They will not like you. So that has an influence on how they feel about it. And it's for us, it's more like what kind of employees and also culture. In some cultures, you are not willing to wait at all compared to the others. In some cultures, like UK, it is very easy for people to give polite comments of the services, but to really get bad responses, you won't get them as much in UK than you will get here in Finland. So we think that these kind of things matter much more than the industry where the company is from.
Yeah, okay, interesting. How do you deal with that then across geographical areas?
We are having benchmark for different kind of employee profiles and also for different kind of countries. So in fact, you're not ever comparing your own results to only on overall averages, but you're able to see it like channel-based, country-based, and also employees kind of technical skill-based. So
okay, fantastic.
Can I comment the kind of the agents' perception on, and they kind of roll in here as well, the earlier question, because that's very, very important thing to understand in the whole area. Because what we have done is that we are always linking the feedback back to the agents immediately. So they are getting instant response of their own work on daily basis. And now the main point here is that if they are measured today by how kind of short the lines are and how fast they answer the phone and how much time was used for ticket, they are really measured in a way how fast they are getting rid of people. But now when you are really asking how these agents made me feel, also that means for the agent that is much nicer thing to measure, because then they will get feedback on how did I help that person, which is really when you feed that back to them, and 75% of all feedback that we are gathering globally is 9 or 10. So this instant feedback is positive in most cases.
It's motivational.
And that changes. Like one customer said to me last week in SITS, when he was visiting Manila, their service desk team, he said that the Manila has changed. And the only reason why he said this was that now the agents are talking about how they are making their employees feel. And that's the power of sharing that information to the agents. You can really also change their feeling, how they feel at work, and which is not a small thing.
Absolutely, yeah, and as you say, really powerful stuff. I think that's a really, really good note to end today's session on, actually. So thank you so much, Fran and Sammy, for your contribution today and for your presentations and for sharing, some of the things that you've seen, and Fran for sharing your real examples of what you guys have done there. It's been really, really good to have you both with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, for everybody listening, as I say, I'll post a link to the recording. You'll get an email with a link to the recording of this if there's anything you'd like to go back and revisit. And we'll include some contact details. So if you want to get in touch with Sammy or talk to Happy Signals, that will be there for you as well. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks everybody for listening and for staying with us. And all the best of luck with your own customer satisfaction and perception programs. Thank you very much. Goodbye.